2012 world medalist, 2011 Pan American Game gold medalist, a four-time national champ, and is wrestling currently for the Sun-Kissed Kids. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to bring on Helen Maroulis.
Hey, Danny. Thanks for having me on here. I'm so glad to be here.
So great to have you, Helen. And as you know, the IOC has dropped wrestling from the 2020 games. How do you feel about that?
When I first found out when I was leaving for a tournament, so I was with my team, and it came as a surprise and a shock to all of us. But it's also not been a surprise, just how fast everybody responded to it. I mean, wrestlers, we're all fighters, and we all love this sport. So just to see how many people that have come together to support wrestling and to fight for wrestling to get back into the Olympics is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. You've, being a female wrestler, probably has it a little tougher than all the males out there. Tell us a little about your career and how it's helped you out through your life.
Yeah, it's definitely been tough. I started wrestling when I was 7 years old, so I think 1999, and I wrestled on an all-boys team all through high school till my junior year. And when I first started in the sport, I was kind of met with some criticism and rejection and stuff like that. A lot of adversity actually, but I've always been privileged enough to find a team and a coach that's been supportive, and I think that's what really helped me and helped push me to keep pursuing my dream. And my parents and family was always supportive, but there were definitely times where I'd be in the practice room and nobody would want to work with me. All the guys would ignore me, and there were some tough times, but it's definitely changed.
Recently, you've competed in a lot of big events. The Rumble on the Rails in New York, where you pinned a Russian. Tell us a little bit about that.
How what?
Tell us a little about how that felt. How you got to pin a Russian. Russians being one of the top countries in the world.
Yeah, that event was so great. It was such a great experience. We got to wrestle. It was a team from USA, from Iran, and from Russia, and everyone just packed into Grand Central Terminal. So we were in Grand Central Station. It was just so cool. And, there were tons of Iranian fans cheering, going crazy. Like, it felt like it was a world championships almost, because the Iranian fans are just awesome. They're so supportive. They love wrestling. It's their national sport. And same with the Russians. Like, they're really big into wrestling too. So to be able to wrestle a Russian girl on that stage and with all these teams around, and for an event that, not only helps youth wrestlers, but also was in support of saving Olympic wrestling, it was just such an honor. It was awesome.
You were able to hit a really slick double leg just like Jordan Burroughs. How did that feel?
Oh gosh, that was really funny actually, because when they gave us the lineup, I saw that I was wrestling after Jordan Burroughs, and I turned to my coach Terry Steiner, and I was like, "Dang, I got to wrestle after Jordan! Like, I need to, I'm following the footsteps of an Olympic champion right now." So I told Terry, I'm like, "Well, I'm just going to go for a double." And I was actually like joking. And then, I don't know, I was just in the match, and I was in the zone, and I ended up hitting a double, and I was like, oh, this is very ironic.
So what did Jordan say anything to you after that?
Yeah, he told me I had a nice double, so, I appreciated that.
Coming from an Olympic champ who's known for his double leg, congratulating you on a double leg, that's got to feel pretty good. Yeah,
it was a good time.
Now, a lot of big concerns that I don't think FILA and the IOC consider is the youth being affected by this. See, I'm an assistant coach for a local high school, and some of these guys are like, well, the games are going to be dropped. Why should I continue wrestling?
Yeah, that's definitely an area of concern. If the games don't make it back, or if wrestling doesn't make it back into the games, I definitely think that it could hurt wrestling at the youth level and, high school levels, and it's definitely going to affect us. So it's so important for young kids to know that, you don't just wrestle in hopes of attaining a gold medal. You also wrestle for what it teaches you, what sport teaches you. And I remember when I first started wrestling, I wrestled for 3 full years, and women's wrestling wasn't an Olympic sport yet. It was in like 99, 2000, something like that. And I just remember my parents thinking, you're going to have to quit soon because there's just not going to be a future for you down the road. And I remember I was really bummed about it because when you love a sport, you love a sport, and there's so much that you can get out of it. And then luckily, women's wrestling was added to the Olympic program, so I got to continue wrestling. But I just remember, it's kind of familiar situation now. Like, what would we do if it's not an Olympic sport? But, it's one of the oldest sports, and it's one of the oldest sports for a reason because of how tough it is, what it teaches you, it's character building, mental toughness. All these great things come from wrestling. So, I think the youth should stay in it.
Last week, Matt Valenti said women's wrestling has been a pioneer because it's creating more opportunities for women. Do you think that's a consideration that the IOC and FILA should consider?
I don't know for sure, but I definitely think that that women's wrestling is very important. It's one of the fastest growing sports. It's a very, very popular sport. There's countries like Japan and Asia where it's their most popular sport for women, and so that's really cool to see. But I think equality in wrestling and equality in sports is something that I hope, or that I think the IOC might be looking at. And if that's the case, then I think women's wrestling is definitely going to be a pioneer.
How does your team feel about women's wrestling? Not having 7 weight classes and only 4. Do you think that hurts you guys a little bit?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think everybody would like 7 weight classes. We have 7 weight classes at the World Championships, and 4 weight classes just isn't enough it's just not enough to get every girl on the team, obviously, but it's just so spread out, and it's tough. You can wrestle 3 years at a non-Olympic weight, and then you have to decide, whether you're going to cut down or bump up, and so you're kind of at a disadvantage. But I think we're thankful that we're in the Olympics because that's awesome. We're definitely making strides. It would be great. It'd obviously always be great to get more weights, but for now we're going to make do with what we have and keep pushing for more. But yeah,
because there's no quote unquote college wrestling for females, and basically right after high school you probably jumped right into the freestyle scene. Do you think that gives you some type of advantage?
It doesn't give me an advantage over my foreign competition because the U.S. is the only country that wrestles folk style. So it helps, and it's kind of maybe a blessing in disguise that maybe there is no NCAA women's wrestling because, we do have college wrestling, but it's freestyle, and it's, more private schools, and it's our own league. It's not with the NCAA or anything, but it's so great. If you want an Olympic medal, you got to train the style that that your sport is in. So I think wrestling freestyle for such a long time is definitely an advantage and definitely helps. But again, these countries, like all the other countries, those wrestlers grow up only wrestling freestyle. So
because now you are currently living at the Olympic Training Center, am I correct?
Yes.
You are actually now able to get a college education because there are more women's programs.
I'm actually what?
You are now getting a college education through going to the Olympic Training Center and training there and at another university, I believe.
Yeah, I actually I go to school in Canada, in Vancouver, BC, and I wrestle for the women's team there. And we compete in the U.S. College Nationals, which might seem kind of confusing, but we're the only Canadian team that does, so it's cool to train in another country with some of my foreign competitors, but then to wrestle in the U.S. Nationals.
How does that feel that there's more opportunities for women now?
It's amazing. It just goes to show that hard work pays off because, all the women that came before me, all the women that, wrestled and that didn't have these opportunities, they're the ones that fought so hard for this, and it wasn't always for themselves. It was, a lot of times for the younger generation. And women are, they're still fighting and they're still supportive. All the older women that did grow up wrestling, Trisha Saunders and just even some of like the 04 and the 08 Olympians. So I definitely think that we can credit a lot of that to them for being pioneers in the sport.
If you could tell the youth one thing right now about keeping in wrestling, what would you tell them or advise them to do?
I would tell them to get the word out, to support keeping Olympic wrestling. So there's the website keepwrestlingintheolympics.com, but also to just continue what they do, just to do what they love, to wrestle, to get their friends to wrestle, to invite their friends to practice, whatever, because it really is such an amazing sport, and it really teaches you so much, and it's so great. So it's presented me with so many opportunities, college-wise and other, but it's also just really made me a stronger person that I am today.
We have an email coming in from Emily, and she wants to know, she feels that she's just one person, and what can one person, really make the difference if I do send an email or vote to keep wrestling? Is really one person going to make a difference?
Totally. I mean, that's how it starts. There's always, one person, or, there's always that silent leader, or there's, someone that just keeps pushing. I mean, like, if you're one person, you can still lead by example, and you can still support, and eventually the ones add up. And that's how I see it. When I grew up, I was the only female wrestler in my state. And at times there was, maybe one other girl or something, but for the most part I was on my own. And it just, and now I'm on a team with 20, 30 girls that were a bunch of girls that grew up in their state where they were the only one. So it just goes to show, I just stick with it, and just, if you're really in support of it, just stay in support, because others will follow.
Also, we have Helen Maroulis, a 2000 world medalist. FILA came out with new rules. How do you think the new rules are going to affect wrestling for the average viewer?
Well, one of the goals of creating the new rules was to cater more towards fans and viewers, and to make wrestling more exciting and easier to understand. I personally haven't wrestled in the rules. I've been out with injury, so I missed a couple tournaments. But from what I've seen, from what I've watched, it looks awesome. I mean, there's so much wrestling, there's so much action, there's so much risk-taking. The matches aren't in the referee's hands, or, it's not so much strategical. It's just getting in there and getting after it and wrestling for, a good hard 6 minutes. So from what I've seen, the Battle at the Falls, the women's event, and then the LA event, United for Wrestling, I mean, it looks like a lot more action than what we saw with the old rules.
All right, we got another question in from Gina. What would you say? Are you going to be competing? When will you compete next? I guess is her question. Where will we see you next?
Okay. Well, I will be competing at we have our world team trials, which is in 2 weeks, June 21st to the 23rd. It's in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I think there will be a live feed and coverage on that event. And the winner of that decides who is on the world team and who gets to go to the World Championships, which is in September. So that's our biggest tournament of the year besides the World Championships.
All right, Helen, you got anything else for our awesome viewers out there?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and for everyone that supported wrestling. And I just thank you for having me on here. It's been really great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2012 World Silver Medalist Helen Maroulis. Thank you so much for helping out.
Thank you.
We're going to get back to the music right here on Radio Nova.
Nobody has more power than Nova. Playing the music you want to hear.